We're both private companies, so we haven't really released the terms of the deal. However, I will tell you that we're not buying any of the property, that we're just buying the newspaper, the titles, the social media, the websites, those assets. But all the physical assets are going to stay with them.
Hi there, it's WAMC News Director Ian Pickus. And on this episode of the WAMC News Podcast, my conversation with Daily Gazette publisher John DeAugustine. 2 years after taking over the Amsterdam Recorder, the Daily Gazette says it's acquiring the Gloversville Leader-Herald, one of the nation's last afternoon publications. The Gazette, based in Schenectady, will acquire the Leader-Herald from the Nutting Company. Gazette managing editor Kale and Brown will oversee both outlets. John DeAugustine says the Leader-Herald will continue to cover Fulton, Hamilton, and Montgomery counties using local journalists. I spoke with him on Tuesday. What led up to this acquisition?
So we have been talking to the Nutting family for some time about this. It makes sense for us because the Daily Gazette is deeply committed to local journalism. And a publication like the Leader-Herald fits very nicely into our mission in that regard. The Ogdens, they've run this the Ogden companies run this for a long time, and we just had to really talk them into selling it to us.
What can you tell us about the terms of the deal?
Well, we're both private companies, so we haven't really released the terms of the deal. However, I will tell you that we're not buying any of the property, that we're just buying the newspaper, the titles, the social media, the websites, those assets. But all the physical assets are going to stay with them.
Will this be very similar to what happened with the Amsterdam Recorder and the couple of weeklies during that acquisition?
Yes.
And what does it mean for the people who are employed by the Leader-Herald right now?
We're just getting into that right now. As a matter of fact, I just left there. We had a meeting. We encouraged all of the current employees to give us all their information, and we are going to talk to each of them and see if there's a fit for them in the Daily Gazette company. But as you mentioned, we have a model that we use for the Amsterdam Recorder where we take these papers because they're so close and we just incorporate them into the Gazette family. So it will be run very differently than it's run currently. Thus, we must go through and look at each of the employees and see who will fit and who won't, who will want to come work with us and who won't. So there's some wood to chop there.
How will it work with Kale and Brown managing both outlets?
She's outstanding. I think that her impact in Amsterdam was felt almost immediately when we hired her. She has outstanding news judgment. She's wonderful with the reporters. So it's just going to expand her responsibility a bit. And she's going to work directly with the reporters and page designers and web editors to make sure that we put out a product that the people in Gloversville and Johnstown and that surrounding area really love.
Why the decision to stop afternoon publication of the Leader-Herald? Well,
we feel that in the future, in the next 60 days or so, we're going to do a deep dive into that. I think that it's going to fit our model much better of the news cycle. It's going to be more efficient for us to do it in the morning. We already have carriers on the ground there in the morning. So if we can marry those routes together. But at first, we are going to keep all the afternoon carriers. We are going to keep the afternoon delivery. And then we will migrate to morning when the time is right. When it will have the least impact on the carrier force and the readers.
For people who follow media, there's really, I think, two ways to look at what you've been doing. One is, the Amsterdam Recorder and the Leader-Herald, they might not be around forever, if not, merging with a larger company like the Daily Gazette. On the other hand, this is one owner now expanding, from Schenectady into the Adirondack foothills and Amsterdam, Gloversville, Johnstown. Can you make the case for me as to why this is the best case scenario?
Sure. The Daily Gazette's higher mission is to support the communities we serve through outstanding journalism. And I think that we have shown through our investments in the Gazette and the Recorder that we are truly committed to doing that. In Gloversville, they have a lot of challenges in that community. And there's always the chance that they wouldn't have been able to support a local newspaper like the Leader-Herald 6 days a week. We know that with our model, we can make it work. And we have a long view on this. The Daily Gazette wants to be around for the next 120. We're 126 years old, and we want to be around for the next 126 years. So we see local journalism as the key to that future. And now that will be applied to the Leader-Herald. And it will be successful for many years to come.
How did that meeting go? You said you just got out of a meeting with them in Gloversville.
Oh, they're wonderful people. Outstanding. Very interested in the community, longtime employees. I can't wait to work with them over the next few weeks to make sure that the transition is great. I'm hoping that we get some of them to come work with us at the Gazette. Just an outstanding group of people, and I had a great time talking to them, and I think they got a lot out of it as well.
Have you given any thought to establishing new news bureaus? I know the Gazette for a time had a space in Amsterdam, specifically, and in Saratoga. Are you thinking about staffing some current Gazette journalists in areas like Gloversville and Johnstown now?
We will. We have an office in Amsterdam. It's right on Main Street, and we're going to have an office in Gloversville. The deal came together a little clunky on the timing, unfortunately. So we don't have the office space picked out yet. We are going to get something very quickly so that we can have a presence in the community. We think that's absolutely imperative. Of course, reporters do not need to come into the office. Our sales reps don't need to come into the office. This can all be done remotely. But we feel like being a community newspaper that you need a space in that community where we can interact with the people there. So we're going to do that. We will continue to staff our Amsterdam office, and we're going to have a Gloversville office.
That's Gazette Publisher John DeAugustine. John, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
I appreciate the time today. Enjoyed it.
All right, that does it for this episode of the WAMC News Podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, I'm Ian Pickus.